So if you're into personal development, you are going to love my guest today on the podcast, Jairek Robbins. You may well have heard of Jerick, but if you haven't, he's a congressional award winner. He's been featured on Forbes and Success magazine, and he's mentioned by authors such as Brian Tracy, who said that he can make a difference in the lives of others. He really is an interesting character, and some of the value he gives in this podcast is exceptional. We're going to be diving into topics like what are the habits of the best, what business practices do they maintain, and what personal and relationship practices do they manage to sustain. We're also going to be looking at how do you work with a spouse or a partner in your business, and then how do you navigate the complexities of a personal relationship with your business relationship, because we know lots of you as construction business owners have your spouses or partners working in the business too, so you'll find that really interesting. We also briefly talk about the release of his dad's new book, Tony Robbins' book, The Holy Grail of Investing, and that's worth one downloading or buying, because Tony Robbins is worth over 600 million last time I checked, so that's certainly worth paying attention to too, and we've got links for all of that in the show notes. So it really is action-packed. You're going to absolutely love it. Let's dive in. Jairek Robbins, really appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, it's absolutely great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. So, Jerick, I've just done quite a comprehensive introduction. There was a lot to talk about on there because you've achieved a lot in a relatively short space of time. But I'd love to know a little bit from yourself. I always ask this to my guests. Tell me a little bit more about who Jairek Robbins is.
This part's always interesting because people ask, who am I? I love to travel, love my wife, love my son, love volunteering, love to learn, love to give back in fun ways and creative ways to support the people we love and also support the community. Always love to grow. So every stage of my life I've always been looking for like where's the new opportunity? Where's the thing I could learn? What's the new skill set, or what's the new approach, or what's the new framework that I can add to what I'm already doing? And so I guess those are some of the things that are most passionate to me.
Fantastic. Yeah, growth is absolutely key, isn't it? I noticed that I've been following you for a while, so I see that mentioned often. And you seem to, obviously you've got a wide experience in coaching, you work with a lot of businesses, but your main focus seems to be human peak performance and human growth and performance in life. But why is that area so important to you? Why have you focused in on that?
Well, I'll reverse engineer it for you. I've been working now in a coaching capacity for 20 years, which is wild. So 2 decades in working with people. Specifically, I tend to work with business owners, or people who are probably considered the best at what they do. So I've had a chance to work with the armed forces. I was working with the special operations, the guys and gals who are the best at what they do over there. Had a chance to work with some Olympic athletes, again, the best at what they do. Had a chance to work with bankers or hedge fund guys, best at what they do. And so generally speaking, I'm either drawing in the types of humans who are striving to be the absolute best and maximize what's really possible in their life, or they're hungry to drive their business forward. One or the other, usually my main audience. What I found is there's certain repetitive soft spots, dangers, certain repetitive things that tend to go wrong with that type of person in their life. And so for most of them, if you're going 10,000 miles an hour to build your business and you're trying to build an empire of sorts, it's fairly predictable that at some point your health is going to become a second thought, a secondary thing you're not really paying attention to. It's just something that's happening, or you're cramming food in your mouth between meetings, or you forget to eat. Maybe you're doing well enough where you have a team member who brought you lunch and it just sat on your desk for 8 hours as you worked your way through meetings. And so the concept of their health tends to fall apart. And what is the ultimate consequence when that happens? Well, they're most likely headed for a heart attack, Alzheimer's, heart disease, like the bad stuff that you don't want to have. And none of the stuff that shows up magically overnight. It's the stuff that takes a while to build into. So they're on the path to get there. They're not seeing any consequences of their behavior right now. But if you give it enough time, eventually life just wallops you over the head And it's an extreme situation that now really has to be dealt with. Other thing that tends to happen, you're working, and let's say you're super healthy. I met someone recently where he's so proud of his health. He takes 100 and something pills a day, and he's totally optimized, and he does his ice plunge and his meditation and his breath work and all this stuff. And I was like, either he's a unicorn or it's predictable that his relationship is in trouble. And I just went on a ledge and I was like, how's your relationship doing with your wife and kids? And he goes, between you and me, it's falling apart. And I was like, I knew it. And I was like, again, either he's a unicorn, either he's magically figured it all out, which a few do, or it's predictable that if you're all in on your business, your health might take a toll. If your health's dialed in, it might be your relationship that's taking a toll. And I'm not talking about work-life balance. That's not the concept here. These are peak performers. These are the best at what they do. They are all in. They're 1,000% focused every day. We got to figure out what are the habits, what are the rituals, what are the routines that help keep these other parts of their life steady and growing, even if a little bit, while they're so busy, so focused on this one part of their life that they're determined to make happen. And so I fell into this category. And I'll reverse engineer it. These aren't the people I necessarily, quote unquote, wanted to work with in the beginning. I wanted to work with the underprivileged and the people who were struggling and didn't have access to these tools. And that's where my heart was. What I found was after, I think, my first 5 years of coaching people, instead of saying, who is my perfect client? Who do I want to work with? Who do I enjoy the most? I reversed it and I asked a different question. My question was, who gets the best results when they choose to work with me? Who's the person that if they invest $1,000, they get 10 or 50 or $100,000 in return? Who's the person that if they put in the hour of work, it frees up 5 hours a week for them because of the strategy we came up with? Like, who's the person who really gets an insane return? I think of it as an investor. So if they're willing to put the money in and put the time in, one, how quickly do they get that money and time back? Two, what is the multiple they then gain on the original investment? And so when I really analyzed it and scrutinized the metrics and the numbers, the people who got the absolute best return were business owners and people striving for the peak of performance.
Can I just quickly interrupt this podcast and ask you please for a favour? We're constantly trying to bring you the best value and the best specialist guests to come on this show. But the only way we can do that is if we start growing this channel. So could you please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already? And we'd love it if you could give us a review. These reviews really help promote the algorithm and promote engagement. And it means that our guests can see that we've got a really successful show. I hear from you in the background that you're enjoying it. So please take 5 minutes to do this. It will really mean a lot to me and help the show going forwards. Yeah, that's fascinating. Really interesting, one of the points you just mentioned there, because we do see this a lot where you see people really excelling in one area of their life and then another area's falling down. You've obviously worked with a lot of people, a lot of successful people. Is it possible to have it all, or are humans just designed that if you are going to excel in one bit, then you have to accept that something's not going to be right in your life?
No, it's totally possible to have it all. And it takes some time and effort to get there. It doesn't happen overnight, just like anything. Anything worth having takes time and effort to get to. My wife and I, just to tell you our week, we work 4 days a week. The first half of Monday is our date day. So we start the week with a date. And the reason I do that is my belief is if I'm going to wake up, work out, meditate, breath work, sauna, cold plunge, do this entire routine to get myself to the peak of my existence in the morning, what's most important to me? That's where I choose to invest the best version of me first. If you're telling me work is most important, one, you probably have your priorities jacked up. And so I've never met someone on their deathbed who says, shit, I wish I would have gone to one more meeting. Like, that's not what people say when they look back at their life on what's actually most important. They say, I wish I would have been there for my kid, or I wish I would have been there for my spouse. I wish I would have, done one more thing to show them how much I love them. I wish I would have had a few more moments to share with them, or another special trip or memory with them. And so I look at that and say, if my wife is the most important person in my life, how do I put her first to start the week? I get myself to the absolute best version of who I can be. And the first person I invest my effort and energy and thoughts and life into is my wife. So we go surfing or we go for a 3-mile walk together and we talk about what we're grateful for and what we appreciate about each other, what we love. We get back from that the second half of the day. We have a quick meeting. We work together, so we have a quick meeting. And then we do stuff like this where I start jumping on calls and presentations and client meetings and coaching and everything else. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, normal work week for us. We do training. We have clients in 131 countries active with us learning around the world. Luckily, I think it's like 2,000 or 2,500 reviews. We have a 4.7 out of 5-star rating in our courses. So we're delivering good work around the world and helping people become happy, healthy, strong, fulfilled individuals and organizations. And then on Friday, how do I wrap up the week? The first half of Friday is always date day. So 9 a.m. till noon, my wife and I go back out. We go have our surf date or our walk. We were listening to a couples relationship podcast from a therapist who's worked with thousands of couples. And they said, at least try to say I love you once a week to that person. And maybe get at least one good date night in for a couple hours. And that'll really help you keep your relationship on the right track. My wife and I looked at each other and we're like, what a low standard. You want to have an extraordinary relationship based on saying I love you once a week? Come on. So we give each other a whole day a week in the work week to invest into each other and build our relationship. It's still challenging. We have coaches. We've gone to therapy. We've done all these things. Still challenging, but we heavily invest into each other. Our health, is it the same as when I was a single guy and could spend 2.5 hours at the gym every day? Definitely not. I might get a half hour or an hour every day, but it's every day. I always tell people in their health, if you had 24 hours to transform your health and get in the best shape of your life, how would you do it? And for most people, you're like, well, I'd eat healthy and work out and do all these things. And I'm like, well, if you were smart, you'd take 30 minutes a day and spread it over 24 days or 48 days, and that'd transform your health in a very positive way. But most people want to go to the gym and jump on the treadmill for 24 hours straight thinking it's going to change something. And the only thing it changes is how bad they're going to hurt the next day from soreness. And so the thought of, are you appropriately allocating the right amount of time each day to keep that momentum up? If I give you 24 hours to change your health, that might be challenging for most people. But if I give you 10 years, 30 minutes a day, not that hard to stay on the right path. And so we help people dial these areas in. And it's very, very cool to see the difference it makes in their lives.
I'm sure it is, yeah. So just want to dive in a little bit further because you mentioned working with Amanda on the show here. So I've seen that, and it's great to see you both on your Facebook Lives and the videos that you're doing together. Obviously, some business owners decide to work with their wives, some don't. And I've worked with clients where sometimes the wives are the real powerhouses of the business, actually, even though some might be maybe working in the background, necessarily in construction, but they're the real driving force behind it. And the dynamic is incredible. Whereas for others, it just does not work and they're ready to kill each other and, potential divorce. What tips would you give for someone if they're considering working with their wife in business? How do you make that dynamic work so that you're not just in each other's pockets all the time?
Totally. I just taught a session on this for a program we have called the Core 4. We call it hats and roles. And so we went and interviewed probably 15, 20 couples when we first got married, some that worked together, some that didn't work together, some that were married forever, 50, 60 years, some were married, 2 or 3 times kind of stuff. And we interviewed all these couples who've been married for a significant period of time and asked them, like, what's the secret? What I found was a few things. There was a consensus where older men tend to say, happy wife, happy life. If you just learn to say, yes, dear, that'll really make it work. And my gut response as a 30-year-old man was like, really? You just roll over and do whatever she wants the rest of your life? Like, ugh. What? I mean, you sound weak as a human being. Like, don't you stand for something? Isn't there something you stand up for? And they're like, you'll see. I'm like, oh God, like it just didn't sound that great. And what I learned was I actually went and studied the hormone cycles of men and women. And as women exit menopause, their testosterone levels tend to go up. As men get older, our testosterone levels tend to go down, starting the slope at age 30. So from 30 on, men's testosterone tends to drop consistently and women's eventually goes up. And I went, wow, that makes a lot more sense. These older guys I'm interviewing are 60s and 70s. Their testosterone's diminished. And their wives are now pumping with testosterone to some level. They're cleared, they're directive, they know what they want, they're strong, they're powerful. And I was like, that makes a little more sense. But then I looked at that and I went and talked to a few of my friends who do hormone replacement, hormone balancing for people, for peak performers, athletes, that stuff. And we talked about it and they said it doesn't have to be that way. That way might be okay for some people if they like it, or for other people, you can go get hormone balancing and stay in that same place you've always been. But one couple told me something really interesting. Besides nature having its toll on our bodies and natural stuff happening, they said they got together. Both of them had been married before. So both of them had one that did not work. And what they both learned was there was a lack of clarity of roles and responsibilities. Who, and this is a very specific word, who owns which categories? Ownership. And I said, what do you mean by owns? Because they kept really highlighting that word. And they said, owns. They get the final say. I was like, what? So you just do whatever they say? And you're like, no. There's a consensus. There's a space where everyone gets to share their thoughts or opinions. But when someone owns a category, they are the final decision maker, regardless of thoughts and opinions. Now, when that sounds interesting. And so my wife and I adopted that, where we own different categories. I own certain categories in our personal life. I own certain categories in our business. She owns certain categories in our personal life. She owns certain categories in our business. If someone asks me about marketing, no matter how great my ideas are, I can share all my ideas with my wife. She owns the category. It is her decision on what will or won't move forward. That took a while for us to learn how to do with each other, because, I'd get so excited about my marketing idea. And I'd be like, oh, I think this one's going to work. And she'd be like, absolutely not. And I'd be like, just killing my ideas. And she's like, wait a minute, who owns the category? I'm like, that's right. It's up to you. And I have different categories where the same thing would happen. But eventually we got into the rhythm of allowing each other, and it's we both give each other the space to take ownership of that category. And that has made a world of difference for us in working together.
I absolutely love that. I've not come across that concept at all before, but I think that's full of value there. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jerick. So again, talking about relationships and working together, how do you then stop that spilling over into family life? Because it's very difficult to switch off as a business owner, isn't it? You work all day and then all of a sudden you're sitting down at the dinner table and you don't still want to be talking about work. How do you get couples to manage to switch off and then refocus on what's truly important?
So we talked about roles. The other part of that class I taught was hats, the hats people wear. Best way to describe this. So I learned this concept from a woman who taught a book called The Amazing Development of Men. And there was another book called The Queen's Code for the women's stages of development. And she broke up, after 15 years of study and research, she broke up the stages men and women go through in their life into stages, distinct stages we move through. If I were to give a fast forward version, and I'll give you the fun version, for women, she generally categorized it as women, and she uses like King Arthur, knights, notes, princesses, queens, kings. She uses those terms to describe the stage. But I'll give you the fast forward version. So 0 to 13, young women, she called them, what did she call them? I think they're like damsels, or like this unique, sweet, innocent, fun, everything in the world's beautiful and amazing and incredible. Somewhere around 13 and all the way to 30, they enter this stage called a temptress. And a temptress, and if women are listening, they might identify easier or quicker at this stage. It's where a woman figures out she has powers through her attitude, her intelligence, her looks, her way of being, her pouting, her crying, her strength, her power, whatever. She learns how to basically wrap men around her pinky finger. And if you're a father and you have a daughter, ask your wife. She'll be able to point it out and be like, oh, she has you wrapped around her finger, Papa. Like, she can get you to do anything if she just cries or laughs or yells or whatever she does. But 13 to 30, women find this unique power in the world where they can basically manipulate the tar out of men. And other women see it, but men tend to be a little slow on identifying this concept. All of a sudden they get to 30, and there's this phrase they use. They say, I'm tired of a man that doesn't stand for anything. I'm tired for a guy that I can just manipulate. I want like a man, not just a boy, is the types of words they use. And what they're looking for is someone who actually owns their presence, knows what they stand for, their values. They're really, stand strong, and they won't bend because they know it's the right thing to do. And so fast forward, they get to this stage around 30. They're tired of all these men they can manipulate. They want someone that doesn't budge, someone that really stands for something that they can trust, someone they can count on. Let's say 30 to 50, they stay in this, she called it a princess stage. And then eventually they become a queen, where they become the matriarch. They become the one running the family, just making the big decisions, driving the vision, which aligns with that hormone stuff too. When I used to share that was the path. A lot of women would get really frustrated, and they're like, I don't relate to that at all. Like, I was tough as nails as a kid. I grew up playing sports. My dad taught me how to change my own tires and oil. Like, I'm not a freaking princess. I don't need some guy to save me. Like, I can go jump off a cliff. And what happened, we did a little bit more research, and we found out there was a secondary path that exists nowadays. And the secondary path where some women went up to temptress, other women went in the tomboy. And tomboy was, I'm tough as nails. I'm a young woman. I do it myself. I put on my pair of jeans. I can kick your ass, and I can do anything you can do. I can probably do it faster, better, and stronger than you can. Like that kind of presence. They're not trying to get a man to do something for them. They'll push his ass out of the way, and they'll do it themselves. From a tomboy, they go to a businesswoman. I did it for myself as a girl. I will do it for myself and a woman. Boss babe, I'll build an empire. Move. I can drive my own business. I can build my empire. I can do what I want. Eventually, they become a super businesswoman where they train other women how to do it too. Here's what's wild. Let's zoom in on a specific stage. Boss babe, super businesswoman, kicking ass, taking names, doing what needs to be done. She can do it 10 times better than any guy because she can multitask and accomplish anything she wants. She's healthy, strong, fulfilled. She's kicking ass at life, doing everything. One day she's at work and she just gets exhausted. She's tired. She's like, you know what? I'm tired of doing it all on my own. I don't want to have to decide what I'm going to have for dinner. I'm exhausted. I want to go home and make no decisions. I just want to relax. She goes, okay, Prince Charming, where the hell are you? And some sap on a horse rides up and says, oh, hey, do you want to go to dinner? And she goes, sure, I'll give you a shot. And he says, do you like Italian? And she goes, okay, fine. And she goes to dinner with this guy, and, she relaxes, and he makes all the decisions, and she kind of takes this hat and takes off the businesswoman hat, puts on the princess hat, and relaxes. Prince Charming's making a few good decisions, and she gives him a shot. And then all of a sudden, they go to bed, they wake up the next day. She's walking through the living room, sees him working on an Excel spreadsheet for business, and after 2 or 3 keystrokes, she thinks, I could do that so much better than him. He's doing it wrong. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience where at this point they're dating. So let's say the girlfriend leans over and says, honey, have you ever tried it like this? And she gives him a way to do his work better. Now, most of us guys are totally open to an invitation for someone to tell us how to do things better in our work and career. So he growls at her, why are you telling me what to do with my work? And she goes, Jesus. And she switches hats. She takes off the princess hat, takes off the businesswoman hat, puts the princess hat back on and goes, why would you treat me like that? And he feels confused. Who the hell are you trying to tell me what to do in my business? And she goes, now you're being rude. She's a little frustrated. She takes off the princess hat, puts on the businesswoman hat and says, but you really should do it the other way because that's way easier, smarter, and faster. Save you a ton of money too. And he goes, hey, who's telling me what to do? And she takes off the businesswoman hat, puts on the princess hat, and goes, why would you treat me like that? And now this poor sap is something called confused. I don't know if you're hearing the thought though, what we've found is men and women can change hats quickly. And so one thing we need to do as couples, if you work together, is write this down. And what you write down is, what are the hats I tend to wear throughout a day? With each hat I'm wearing, and I gave you a few silly examples, but with each hat I'm wearing, what do I need what do I want, and what do I desire while I'm wearing that hat. If I'm in my businessman hat, needs are like oxygen. I cannot survive without them. Wants are like a house with a nice view. I can survive without it, but I want it. It's something on my list of something I'm willing to work for, willing to go after. Desires are things I think I want, but I don't have any tangible experience with yet. So I might get it and think it's cool. I might get it and be like, nope, that ain't it, and want to get rid of it quickly. And so what hat do I wear? And what do I need? What do I want? What do I desire while wearing that hat? So you got to make a list of hats. I got businessman, father, husband, lover, son, brother. Like I have all these hats I wear, and I got to know what do I need? What do I want? What I desire while wearing that hat. And then I got to be able to signal to the one I love, which hat am I wearing right now? So they know how to serve it up. And I need to know what her hat, in my case, what my wife's hats are. I need to know what hat she wears, what causes her to switch hats, and what does she need, want, and desire when she's wearing that hat. It's an exercise that'll absolutely transform the dynamic of your relationship, both personally and professionally, and help you know how to really meet each other's needs in a deep and profound way if you can get clarity on those things.
That's absolutely fascinating. And I thought I knew my wife, but I think I've got to do a bit of research now and try and understand that a little bit more. But that's really eye-opening. So
what you just said is the most common thing. I have friends who've come in our program who are much older than me. They're in their 60s and 70s, and they say, listen, kid, I've been married for 40 years. You know, I could probably teach you a few lessons on relationships, but, you know, to humor myself, I'll listen to what you have to say. And usually after one or two sessions with us in one of our programs, they'll write in and go, I really thought I knew my partner that I've been married to for 40 years. And my God, you just showed me something that I have no clue what her insight, thoughts, feelings are on this. And I got to go do some work. I got to go find out how she does this stuff. And it blows their mind every time. It's not because I'm so smart. I've spent 15 years studying this subject. 5 years of studying it before I met my wife, and now we've been married for 10 years. So for 15 years, I've been studying and practicing all this material, and it really, really makes a world of difference when you get it right.
Brilliant. Yeah, fantastic. Let's just shift subjects a little bit now. I just want to talk about business owners that might be underwhelmed with how life's gone and their performance in life so far. So let's imagine we're 30, 40 years old. Yeah. Get to middle age.
So a couple of things. Before you even say this, I'll throw this out there. The middle age of life is people who are least satisfied. It's the most miserable part emotionally of our lives, because when in our 20s, we look out at the future and we think anything's possible, and by God, I'm the one who's going to do it. And we think we're going to do all these incredible things. Somewhere in our mid-30s, mid-40s, we start to become the truth with what we're actually going to be able to accomplish and what we think, if we're real, if we're honest, what's probably out of the wheelhouse for us. And that becomes the least satisfying time of our life. But keep going with the question. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, you're on the exact train of thought that I was on. So if a business owner is like that, which we hear all the time, not quite got to where they want to get to, and I don't think social media helps with this, does it? Because you're constantly comparing yourself with others. But how do you then realign and redecide, what do I actually want out of life? How do you get your mojo back if you're feeling a little bit fed up because you haven't quite got there?
Sure. I literally just taught a session on this last week. There's 2 letters you need to write down. If you have a pen and paper, just grab it, write down a giant B dot, and then right after it, S. And so I tease people. I say, everything you just told me is complete and utter bullshit. And they laugh and usually get a smug look on their face because they don't like hearing that. And I say, no, the real BS is your belief system. When you started your business, I'm sure there was no lack of humans in your life that told you, this is silly, it won't work, you're not going to make it, you're going to lose everything, why are you doing this, this is dumb. But you were young enough, usually young and naive enough, to say, well, maybe that's true for you, but that's not true for me. I'm going to make it happen. I'll find a way. I'm crazy enough to make this thing work. And then you did. And all those people now, if you say, hey, what do you think? They're like, well, you got lucky. Or, maybe you're gifted. Maybe you're talented. Maybe you're special. And if you look back, a few people got lucky, but for you, was it really that you were that special or unique or lucky? For most of us, it's like, no, I worked my face off for decades at this. This didn't show up magically. I'm 20 years into this, and it's finally working the way I thought it would 20 years ago. And that concept of like, it takes a while to get the momentum you want. But you were crazy enough to dream that way in the beginning. Now you're getting more realistic and, more, you're just kind of understanding the way life is and all this stuff. And all that's happened is you started to let doubt sleep into your belief system. It drives me nuts. And if you look back, they say the same thing. My dad has coached or worked with the Warriors a lot, and he was working with Steph Curry. And everyone looks at this guy. He's a basketball player in America. And they say he's so gifted. He's so talented. He's hit 3,000 shots in the game, and that made him the number one three-point shooter of all time in the history of all of basketball. He's taken 15,000 shots in a game, and he's made 3,000. That's the best that's ever been done. And nobody really thinks about the 2.5 million practice shots he's taken in his career. And then if you take the 2.5 million practice shots and the 15,000 game shots and the 3,000 shots he landed, it doesn't sound that special. To land 3,000 out of 2.5 million, that's not very special. But most people look at the 3,000 and say, wow, he's gifted. It's kind of like owning a business. When you've hung out with someone who's been doing it for 20 years, they've taken 1 million shots, 2 million shots. They've been told no millions of times. It hasn't worked out tens of thousands of times. But they kept going. They landed their 3,000 shots that did work, and all of a sudden, now everyone thinks they're so damn special. They're talented. They're gifted because it worked 20 years later. And in reality, all of us know it was the 2.5 million practice shots we took in the background that allowed us to become so great at what we do. But here's the key. Not everyone took their 2.5 million shots. That's why most people in the NBA, even though they're considered the best players on earth, are just average. Like, tell me who the 11th player on the Warriors is. Most people don't know. Tell me who's on second string on the Bulls, or, if you ask others, nobody knows. You know the 12 guys or 5 people who are the best on earth. Everyone else kind of blends in. Same thing in your industry. If I were to ask you who are the top 5 operators in your industry, they'd probably quickly come to mind. If I were to ask you who's number 124, you'd probably go, because they just blend in after that top 5. And so if you actually wanted to achieve greatness, if you actually wanted to 2x, 5x, 10x, 12x, 1,000x your organization, you can totally do it, but you have to get surrounded by people who are also striving for that greatness. You can't do it hanging out with normal people who aren't willing to go take their 2 million practice shots. The people who go, oh, that's stupid. I'm going to go sit and drink a beer and watch a show. They aren't going to get you to the top 5 spots in the world at what you do. But if you get around the right group of people who are hungry and driven to try to be that top 5, even if they never make it, but they're hungry to do it. Another way to say it is get around where it's better. Start hanging around people who run faster than you. If you run and you're the fastest person in your peer group, you'll always come in first, but you won't get any better. If you start running with a peer group who runs much faster than you might come in last, but your speed will increase. You'll actually be improving. I did this about 7 years ago. I joined this group. And when I joined, I was the smallest company. It's a minimum $1 million a year in revenue to get in. I was the smallest company at the table. The largest company at my group was doing $122 million a year in revenue. I was doing just a couple. And I was like, oh boy, this is crazy. Like, those guys are doing 122 million. They're doing 50 million. They're doing 75 million. I'm like, 2, welcome to the table. And what's interesting, we grew 142% over the next 3 years as a company. And then we cracked open and went way beyond that. And all that happened was it was putting myself at the table where I was the smallest fish in the pond. And I strive for that. I look for that now where I'm like, where can I go that I'm the small fry? I'm the little one. I'm hungry, excited. I can certainly add value, but where do I go where I'm the little guy? And I often try to find myself a seat at those tables because that table will cause me to grow far beyond what anything I could have figured out on my own.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you're at that table with business owners that are absolutely smashing it in their businesses, what are there typical habits and behaviors that you're seeing as a pattern from these highly successful people that you've then thought, yeah, that's what was missing and that's now what I'm going to do?
Most of them are on the verge of heart attacks and divorces, which I was like, I can help. That was the number one pattern I saw at that table. Number two, though, is they really figured out there's predictable patterns in business. And what became ironic and eye-opening to me was the same struggles they were having at $121 million a year was the exact same struggles people were having at $50 million a year. No different. And just because you solved it once doesn't mean you solved it forever. That was one of the fun lessons of someone's like, oh, I solved that. And 3 months later, we saw them at their board meeting and it was like, oh, that fell apart. They're like, what happened? I thought you nailed that. And I was like, well, turns out you don't just fix it once and forget it in business. It's something that, you know, there's all these phrases. Every level has another devil. There's the phrase of what got you here won't get you there. It's so true. We have to constantly unlearn and relearn to be ready to elevate into that next stage of our business. And even though we solved it or think we solved it, doesn't mean it's gone forever. Oftentimes that'll circle back around and kick us again at a different moment or different stage of the journey. And so predictable patterns became the thing that I saw. And I was like, I can see the consistent patterns. And it was lead acquisition, lead conversion, max capacity. Like they either didn't have enough leads or they had plenty of leads and they couldn't convert, or they were converting and they had too much business that they couldn't service at a high quality. We call that max capacity. What's so dangerous at that stage of business is if you oversell your ability to deliver high quality, you will actually cause your business to fall apart. And so we figured out stage one, lead acquisition, marketing, lead conversion, sales, max capacity, service. You got to get those three dialed in. And the only way you can expand on the third, if you go to the other stage of business, which is people, process, and dashboards. So can you put the right people with the right process and the right measurements and dashboards to get them to deliver with absolute exceptional service and quality? If you do that part right, now you've expanded your max capacity, but where do you go from here? We worked with a group where when she started, she had just graduated business school. She was a couple $100,000 in debt. She had a vision, but she cried her first meeting the whole time and didn't know what to do. She was so scared. And now she runs this organization in San Diego where she's making tens of millions of dollars. She has this incredible team. Her personal savings account is maxing out. Her investments are incredible. And so she's hit all the targets she had. And she kept having this repetitive problem. And the repetitive problem she had was her great people kept leaving. And she's like, I don't know why. Like, my best people show up. They're so passionate. They work hard. They make a ton of money working for us. And then 4 or 5 years later, they just leave. And so we reverse engineered and we said, can we find any patterns of where they all go? And we found out every single one of them who left to go work on a business or a nonprofit or an organization that had this deep, juicy purpose connected to it, some meaning, some problem they were solving for to make the world or humanity a better, better in some way. And we went, what's your purpose? And she kind of shrugged and she's like, deliver a high quality service and make a ton of money in the process. And we laughed. We go, that's why they're leaving. They made their money. Now what? They want to go do something that's actually worth investing their life into, not just work harder for more money. They have enough. And we went, oof. And we figured out the third stage, which was your North Star, your big vision of where you're going 10 years from now, your mile markers, what pace will you be on track to get there? And then finally, your winning habits. What are the things, the rhythms you lock in daily to have that 20-mile march of progress that keeps you on track? And that North Star is where we started to ingrain a purpose, something that's worth going after as an organization. And the moment we dialed that in for her and her company, attrition of great talent was no longer a problem. People stopped leaving because they now had a mission worth collaborating and going after together. And so we found there's predictable patterns in those 3 stages of business growth. And as long as we can help people dial in stage by stage, then they end up growing, 13, 30% per year consistently year over year over year.
Wow. We could have a 5-10 hour podcast just on that little bit. I mean, that's absolutely incredible there. So if someone wanted to learn a little bit more about that, Jerick, do you talk about this on your YouTube channels and Facebook? How would people learn a bit more about that? Because I think you've just touched on a subject that is so deep and so profound. That's incredible, really.
Yeah, we teach it. We have a whole program built around this. I've recorded probably 89 hours of training on these topics over the last probably 4 or 5 years. And so if you just go to my website, on the main page, there's a tab that says Grow My Business. If you just click that and opt in, it'll take you to a page and show you, we call it our business accelerator. So it's the program we've created to help people lift their businesses up. And that other program I talked about is a board. That's where we meet quarterly with, we just met on Friday. We meet quarterly and we have great businesses where we help them actually put together a board for their company where we have outside advisors look in and see what are they missing? Where do they need extra help? Where do they need the accountability? And then we have them put together their plan and submit it to their board so that we can hold them accountable and actually get the growth that they really desire. Our best result so far is a woman-owned consulting firm. They've grown 2,600% over the past 5 years in business. And 3 of those years, they've been on our board program. They're on the fastest 5,000 growing companies in the country. They win all kinds of awards. They're absolutely phenomenal. And it's just having that process, the right people who challenge them, inspire them, hold them accountable, and assist them in really driving their business forward.
That sounds fantastic. So what we'll do is we'll put all those links in the show notes, Jerick, too. Just before you go, Jerick, I'd love to just get one final insight from you. So we're seeing technology move at a rapid pace at the moment with AI. In terms of human potential and optimizing your life with human development, where do you think AI is going to take us? Is it going to help us, or do you think it's going to massively hinder us? We've seen social media work for some and obviously have massive downsides too. Do you think we're going to see some downsides with AI, or do you think it can be really useful?
Well, what's amazing is last year I invested in this group and they went out and purchased general partnership stakes in 60 different private equity funds in energy, tech, venture. What else are they in? Sports. This is really cool. They own a piece of the Boston Red Sox, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Golden State Warriors. They own all these piece of all the franchises. So we got to own a piece of all those things. But one of the things they invested in was this company out of Texas that 3D prints houses. And I just sat through a presentation with him. Jason is his name. Unbelievable human being. Wonderful, huge heart, good person as a human. He's able to print the walls and foundation of houses at the same price as the giant mass home builders in the US. So the Lennars. He got the same price for 3D printing the walls and frames and foundation, which is bananas, except for it takes, the big builder, let's say 4 weeks or 5 weeks or a month to put it up, and it takes him half the time to put up the same. And when he 3D prints it, it's stronger, more weather resistant, hurricane resistant, earthquake resistant. So it's better quality, same price, half the time. Do I think technology and AI is going to transform the way we do business? Absolutely. It's going to radically transform how we do business. The quality, the cost, the speed at which it can be created, it'll transform all of our lives. The key is, how do you keep a pulse? how do you keep your thumb on the pulse of what's coming? The best way I know how to do that, luckily, has been this incredible investment we did with this group out of Texas. If you're interested in stuff like that, my dad has a new book. I think it's downstairs. He has a new book coming out. It's called The Holy Grail of Investing. It's worth getting a copy of. He talks about all these funds and all the different sectors, and then he talks about some of the coolest stuff like that we've seen. And the way we get access is these funds invest in the projects like that. And so we get to hear, as they're raising capital to expand these extraordinary ideas and businesses, we get to hear about them semi-early, which is really wonderful. So I think it absolutely will transform the way we do life and have an incredible, incredible opportunity for all of us.
Fantastic. Yeah. Jerick, can I just say thanks so much for your time today? There's absolutely, I mean, we've covered a wide range of subjects, but there's some real value that I've certainly take away for my personal life, but I know my listeners are going to really value that. So thanks once again. Really appreciate you.